tossers have thrown it out the door with their behaviour this week. They should be ashamed of themselves. They should absolutely look at themselves in the mirror and wonder what the have they been doing. They're hissing at us and calling us cheats in the Lord's long room, and they have the gall to talk to us about the spirit of cricket. Absolute bullshit. There's a big appeal. It's hit him on the pad. He's out. Lions gone. New South Wales are 9 down. Onto Sydney Road, and it's hit a car. Oh, I think it's hit a car. What a way to bring up your 50.
All you want is to leave it all behind. Now there is a simple remedy to stay fit for all eternity.
Oh, hello everybody. Menace here, and I'm here to wrap up day 2 of the second test from the Gabba, the day-night test. And wow, so England started the day. They were 9 for 325. They were bowled out for 334. And then in reply, Australia rollicked to 6 for 378 off just 73 overs. They went at over 5 runs per over. They lead England by 44. It was a 49-run stand between Carey and Neser at the end. So they will resume tomorrow morning. Carey at 46 not out of 45 deliveries. Michael Neser 15 off 30 deliveries. But my verdict is Australia failed to capitalise. At one stage, they were in a prime position at 3 for 290, looking like they could make maybe 500 or more and get a really big lead in this test match. But then Cameron Green, with a complete brain fade, backed away to Bryden Cast late in the day. He was bowled. It's an ugly dismissal, and it opened the door for England, who capitalised with another 2 late wickets, Smith and Inglis. But Australia scored so quickly, and they're already in the lead by 44. They're still in a very good position. So a good day for Australia, but it could have been a great day. And a lot of batters for the Australian top order got a start. Weatherall 72, Labuschagne 65, Smith 61, Green 45, Inglis 23, but none of them went on to make the really big score that could have really put this game to bed for Australia. So, the door is still ajar for England, but, Australia have played this pretty well. We can bat tomorrow in the sunshine if Carey and Neser, Stark and the rest of the tail can keep England out there for maybe a couple more hours, get that lead up, well above 100, then England will have to bat a lot under lights with against a fairly new pink ball. So it's still a good day for Australia, but it looked like Green and Smith were untroubled there for so long, and we're going to be able to bat through until stumps, and Australia, as I said, make that really huge score. I have to also point out England had a shocker in the field, especially in that last hour. They dropped 4 catches, but before that, they dropped another catch. So they dropped a total of 5 catches in that innings. Jamie Smith won early off head, Ben Duckett 2, including Carey first ball off Bryden Cast. Bryden Cast himself dropped Michael Neser late in the day at cover, and Joe Root dropped Alex Carey just before the end of play when the ball went between Root and Smith. And really, Smith should have gone for that because it was on his left and Root's right. But terrible fielding from England. And, had they taken Neser late there, you bring Stark out, you just never know. They could have kept the lead very, very small. And, then you would say England are probably in the box seat because Australia have to bat last. So, yes, could have been a great day for Australia, but in the end, just a very good day for them. But they did score so quickly, and that just kept England under pressure. And England's bowling was woeful at times. They were bowling way too much short stuff. Australia was scoring way too freely square of the wicket. So many balls were scored down to the deep third area, and it was just some wayward bowling by England. They didn't attack the stumps, and at times, Archer was bowling very slowly, sort of high 130s, 140. He wasn't bowling nearly as quick as in Perth. And if Australia can keep England out in the field a bit more, it could play a big part in the second innings if Australia have to chase something. So it's incumbent on Australia to keep England out there as long as they can, because they are struggling. I mean, they're leaking a lot of runs. Archer's going at 3.7 and over. He's the most economical, and he's being treated with the most respect. But Bryden Cast is going at almost 7 and over. Stokes 5.5 and over. Will Jackson only bowled 1 over. Gus Atkinson's going at 4.5 runs per over. So yes, after the day, you would have to say Australia's slightly on top. Pretty good advantage for them. But tomorrow's session, and I know it's a cliche, but the first sort of half an hour tomorrow could really determine the way this test match goes. If England get on a roll and can knock us over early, then a lead of 50 or 60 on this pitch is not that much, because I still think it's a good pitch to bat on. Tomorrow will be a good batting day. So if England can get out there fairly early, they might be able to set Australia a nasty little chase in the fourth innings. So this match is still very much alive, but Carey and Neser looked good, unbeaten on a 49-run stand. If they can keep grinding England to the dirt and get that lead, as I said, up well over 100, then the complexion changes a lot, and the pressure goes on to England. All right, let me just go through the day in a bit more detail. A couple of things from yesterday. Mitchell Starc spoke after the game, and he said the ball went really soft after about 13 or 14 overs, and you could see England today were begging for the ball to be changed, and it was eventually changed after about 47 overs. But that's why it is good to bat on at the Gabba against the pink ball. If you can get through those first few overs, then the ball goes a little soft. It doesn't move around as much as it does at the Adelaide Oval. There's not as much grass on the pitch, so it's not the not the challenge that it is at the Adelaide Oval. So that's why, if you look at England's score yesterday, a bit like Australia today, but especially England's score yesterday, 334 is probably well under par on this pitch and in these conditions. So that's what's opened the door for Australia. Also, we've been debating on this podcast whether Mitchell Starc or Wasim Akram is better. Well, Mitchell Starc categorically said after play, he was asked about it, he said Wasim Akram is the best left-arm bowler he's ever seen. Look, I don't think he was being very humble. I think he was being humble, but, Akram is undisputably a great bowler. So Mitchell Starc settled that debate for us. Since yesterday, there's also been more of a fallout from the Nathan Lyon dropping. You might have all seen the footage where he was interviewed on Channel 7, where he said he was filthy about being dropped. There's also been articles. And look, it really was a mistake. Michael Neser, though, can make some runs and help win this game for Australia, then the selectors will be vindicated. But I think if you just look at the logic of this game, it's a dry pitch. In this next innings, Australia could really use the variety of Nathan Lyon. So it's a real mistake, and he's right to be filthy about it. But yeah, there's a lot of question marks over why the selection was made, because quite simply, if you look at the pitch, it's a dry pitch and it's going to turn, and you would like Nathan Lyon in your attack, and you'd also like his experience. If you really wanted to play Michael Neser, could you have maybe played Nathan Lyon ahead of Brendan Doggett and switched him around that way? So anyway, it's definitely there's definitely been a fallout from the axing, and this could have repercussions on the makeup of the team moving forward. All right, so to start the day, England were out early. I've got to mention, great catch by Marnus Labuschagne off Brendan Doggett. He was a deep square leg, and he dived to his right and took it one-handed. It was an absolute spectacular catch. And, in that innings for England, there were 3 incredible pieces of fielding by Australia. And you just can't rule that out in a close game, how, vital that could be. A couple of great catches, the English run out, just absolutely spectacular stuff. So that kept England down to 334. And also there was the overrate penalties looming over this. Australia needed to bowl England out in under 80 overs. Otherwise, they would get penalised for being so far behind in the overrate. So thankfully, they were able to bowl them out, and they won't lose a ton of World Test Championship points. So England left Joe Root 138 not out. And that's where England no one was there to support him until the end. You look at the Ben Stokes run out last night, or the Will Jacks shot late in the day. Someone needed to stick with Joe Root. For Australia, Mitchell Starc finished with 6 for 75. Neser 1 for 43 at only 3 runs per over. Neser really did settle down well, and he looked like someone that knew the conditions. Surprise, surprise, because that's his home ground. But he hit a good length. Scotty Boland took a bit of tap, 1 for 87. Brendan Doggett, 15.2 overs, 1 for 81. Then the innings started for Australia very slowly. They were scoreless until 3.3 overs when Weatherald cut one past Gully for 4. So Australia took their time. And at one point, Head was dropped on 3 by Jamie Smith off Archer, and English heads dropped. And after that, though, Australia exploded. Travis Head pinned the ears back. Jake Weatherald went with him, and Australia scored 59 in 6 overs and really changed the momentum. And Australia brought up their 50 in just 10 overs. And Head and Weatherald, who put on 75 in the first test, put on 77 in this opening partnership before Head was out for 33 or 43. And it was a bit of a loose shot. He just hit one up in the air off Bryden Cast, trying to sort of whip it over mid-on, and he was out for 33. But after being dropped, he put the foot down, and that did change the momentum very quickly. Australia started to score really well, and we're just eating into that English total against the hard pink ball. I guess the good thing about the hard pink ball is it probably comes onto the bat before it gets pretty soft. That brought Marnus Labuschagne to the crease, and he was a little edgy early on, but he got going, and he and Weatherald started to take on the England bowlers. I mean, before lunch was really exciting. Australia scored very quickly. And in the 18th over in particular, Cast was hit for 4 boundaries, 2 each for Weatherald and Labuschagne. And Australia brought up the 100 in just 17.2 overs. And it is a bit of like baseball being thrown back at England. I mean, this has been phenomenal stuff from Australia. Weatherald brought up his first 50 in Test cricket off just 45 balls with 9 fours and 1 6. And they just didn't bowl well to him. They just kept feeding his cut shot. I mean, he's a very good player square of the wicket. He's still not a bad player off the front foot, but they were just bowling a lot of short stuff to him. He was smacking the ball through, point and behind point and gully. He was even using the uppercut. And, Australia went to lunch 1 for 130 after just 21 overs. So completely changed the momentum of this game, just 200 runs behind after a couple of hours cricket. And, excellent stuff. And after lunch, they kept feeding Weatherald's cut shot until the score was 146. And Weatherald was out for 72 of 78 deliveries. A really good ball from Jofra Archer coming around the wicket, a Yorker hitting Weatherald on the toe, and he was absolutely plumb in front. So a good partnership from Head and Weatherald. They'd taken the score from 77 to 146. And look, I think we're seeing early signs that this Weatherald Head opening partnership could be really devastating for Australia. And we mentioned it on this podcast before, me and Damien, has echoes of Hayden and Langer, 2 punchy left-handers. They like each other. They played a lot of domestic cricket together. And, they've started really well. 2 70-run opening partnerships. It paves the way for Marnus and Smith to come in and take their time a bit more. So, really good start. And Weatherald making 72 off 78. He and Josh Inglis, 2 that got really good balls today. I mean, we'll talk about Smith and Green and some of the other dismissals. Marnus to come, who had a bit of a brain fade. But Weatherald, he did get a good ball. He'll be disappointed he didn't turn that 72 into a big score, but he actually got a decent nut from Archer. Now, when Weatherald was dismissed, Steve Smith came to the crease, and I was listening to SEN, and Gerard Whateley blew up about the England fans booing Steve Smith. So I have to agree, it's a bad look from the England fans to boo a great like Steve Smith. But I guess if I'm being honest, Australian Australian crowds have booed players like Stuart Broad and stuff for years. So I do think it's a bit precious to be upset about that. I think if a spectator pays their money, they're entitled to boo or cheer. I don't know if I'd do it or not. I do think the songs where they get really personal and get into detail about players' careers and things like that can be more damaging to mental health. But, I can see why Jared thinks it's disrespectful for a player like Smith, and it is. I mean, he's a great of the game, possibly the best test player since Bradman, and the England fans could show him a bit of respect, but they don't have to. And, Australian fans would easily do it to players like Kevin Peterson or Stuart Broad, so we can't get too upset about it. But as I said, I think the personal songs, they're probably on the line for me. But yeah, anyway, so Smith came to the crease. The foundation was laid for the middle order. Australia were 2 for 150, excuse me, in 27.2 overs. And I have to say, England wilted pretty early. They looked to be struggling after this assault. When Marnus scored 45 runs, he became the first player to score 1,000 runs in day-night tests. And, Stuart Broad, as I said about the English wilting early, he said on Channel 7 that you could just see England were just dropping off pace, that, they just weren't game hardened for this innings, and Australia just got stuck into them. Marnus got to 50 off 67 balls. He's 25th 50 in tests, and Smith and Marnus put on a 50 partnership of just 66 balls. And, it's a third 50 partnership in a row there for Australia. So a really steady start, an actual stable, top order performance by Australia. We haven't had too many of those in the last few years. But then Marnus was out to Stokes for 65 of 78. There was a little break in play, and Marnus just played a really lazy shot. It was in the corridor, just short of a length ball, and he looked to just guide it sort of wide of second slip and got a faint feather through to the wicket keeper, and he's out for 65. And he did leave 100 out there. That he got himself out there. He was batting really well, and he had that attack at his. Is it as bad as Cameron Green's shot? Maybe. Doesn't look as bad as Cameron Green's shot, but just as much as a loss of concentration as Cameron Green's shot, and just as much an instance of giving a wicket away when you're well on top. So, it won't get the publicity maybe that Green shot, but it's certainly for your number 3. That's kind of giving your wicket away. Travis Head, he plays that way. You can't really criticize him. Weatherall got a good one. Marnus there, just flicking at a ball. He really should have played with more authority. I mean, that was almost like a limited overs shot. That left Australia 3 for 196. Then they brought up the 200 in the 38th over, going at 5.26 runs per over. So that's we were absolutely caning them. Then after tea, I mean, the last session was fantastic. The middle session was a bit more normal, just 98 runs scored for 2 wickets. In the last session, though, 150 runs were scored for the loss of 3 wickets. After tea, they changed the ball in over number 47, and Green and Smith batted really well together. Green and Smith both got hit a few times. The ball was jumping off a length, but they got their 50 partnership of 66 balls, and Smith got to his 50 off 67 balls, his 44th test half century. And then Cass, and this kind of changed the whole complexion of the last session. Australia were just cruising, and Brydon Cass changed to the short ball tactic again. And for the first over, Cass got smashed for over 15 runs. Green backed away, hit a couple over the offside. Smith hit 1 for 6 off the top edge. But then the next over, Cass tried it. Green backed away way too early. It was way too premeditated. Cass bowled a full ball at the stumps, and it knocked middle stump out of the ground, and Green was out for 45. A really ugly dismissal. He had, again, a bit like Marnus Labuschagne, he had 100 just waiting to be scored, and he gave his wicket away. And he's been getting killed online. I've been getting a lot of messages, and you just wonder about Cameron Green. So much potential, but we need to start seeing performances in these really big games. The Ashes is where Australian and English players' careers are defined. So Yeah, that dismissal will haunt him. Australia were 4 for 291, ended a 95-run stand between those two, and a bit like, as I said, why it just wasn't a great day for Australia. Neither of the partnerships got into that zone of triple figures, one player going on to make a big score. And then it could have been worse for Australia. Carey was dropped first ball by Duckett. Short ball, he tried to poke at it, and Duckett dropped it at gully. Tough catch. But then Smith was on strike, and in the same over, he tried to pull Cass, and Will Jacks took an absolute screamer at backward square leg. He was about 3/4 of the way to the boundary. He dived to his right, took an unbelievable catch, and that had Australia 5 for 292. And both set players were out, and Australia was still behind at this stage. They were still 42 runs behind England's first innings score. Loosey shot from Steve Smith. He probably could have just let that one go, but a great catch. That brought Inglis to the crease, his first test match on home soil. And I guess the one thing about Inglis, stuff happens quickly, and he made a dashing 23 off 25. It was a little bit streaky at times, but he got a good one off Ben Stokes. It came back in between bat and pad, swung in a long way from outside off stump, and he was out for 23. But I guess the good thing about him is he kept the scoreboard moving, and Australia were already there, almost level with England by the time he got out. Then not long after, Michael Neser came out with 5 first-class tons. So, Neser does strengthen the batting. Pushes Stark down one, and he averages almost 30 in first-class cricket. So Australia drew level 6 down, and Australians scored their runs 11 overs quicker than England. So Australia was rocketing along all day. As I said, drop catches late in the day. Neser was dropped when he was on 6. The score 6 for 346, and Carey had a chance on 25. Stokes blew up, but they got through. Carey played some lovely shots. He looks in terrific form still. We've seen him bat so well. He's averaging over 40 in Test cricket this year, and you can see why. And so, as I said, Australia's got 3 for 150 in that last session. They finished 6 for 378. They lead by 44, and they do need a lead because the cracks are opening up. They'll have to bat last. So, they want to push that lead up as much as they can. Now, before I leave you, just a couple of bits of news. Obviously, huge crowds at the Gabba, over 37,000 on the first day, over 36,000 today, and there'll probably be a sellout tomorrow. There's been some criticism about, whether you need pink ball tests. Well, on the first day's ratings have been back, and just on free to air, there's been 2 million people watching that first day's play. So that's a huge amount of people watching it, and you just wouldn't get that if it was played during the day on a work day. So, record-breaking ratings for this series, and all the English press who were whinging about a pink ball test. This is why you do it, because it gives millions of Australians an opportunity to watch the test match. Bad news today. It's come out. Josh Hazlewood has had another setback. He's got an Achilles injury. He's not bowling at the moment. He'll start bowling next week. So, look, a bit like Mark Wood, I think you'd have to err on the side that probably unlikely we'll see Hazlewood in this Ashes. You would just err on that side than expecting him to come back. Pat Cummins said today he's looking good for Adelaide, so we'll see him come back. Jai Richardson, now he's another one. He took 4 for 35 today for Australia A, and he could be pretty close to that test squad. He's a genuine wicket taker, bowls a beautiful outswing, and we might see him come into the Australian side if they need some firepower for the back end of this series. And Sam Constas watch, he scored 116 today for New South Wales, a timely return to form for the former opener. But look, that's it for my wrap of day 2 of the Gabba test, the second Ashes test, the day-night test. Australia in a commanding position, 44 in front with 4 wickets in hand. They've had a it's been a very, very exciting day's cricket. Player of the day, you'd have to give it to Jake Weatherald with his 72, his first test half century. He set the tone, really. He got out of the blocks much quicker than Travis Head, and he was phenomenal out there, and he laid the groundwork. And then the middle order, they did really well. Neither of them went on to really make that big signature score, but in the end, a very good day for Australia. So don't forget, like and subscribe the video, the podcast, share it on social media. We've got Cricket Unfiltered t-shirts. I've got my Johnny Bairstow t-shirt here, if you can see on YouTube. So the link is in the episode notes, or just put in Cricket Unfiltered merchandise in Google and it'll come up. But thanks everybody for tuning in, and I'll be back after day 3.